Okay, awesome. We have our browser. Now what? Well, I believe I told you that we needed also a text editor. So we can put our good old friend Google right now already, since it is on our machine to use, and we can just search for the Visual Studio Code. And again, same old spiel. You can just say Visual Studio Code. Well, we're not going to be looking for logo. We're going to be looking for the Visual Studio Code. And notice this is going to be the first link that pops up. So again, bravely, without hesitation, we just head over here. And as you can see, it tells me right away what operating system I'm on, and it says, well, here is the download buddy. Okay, so I'm just going to click it over here. So this is going to start my download again. The installation package is going to be available to us in a second. And again, obviously, if you're using different operating system, they will going to provide you with a proper installation package for your operating system. Now here you can see that this would be my download. So I can just open it over here. And once I have it right next to Google Chrome, I have my Visual Studio Code. Now, again, the same old spiel. I would just need to grab this and just drag and drop it in my applications. So I'm done with getting my Visual Studio Code. And again, the same thing within the applications. I would first find the Visual Studio Code, and I'm just going to open up over here. Now, let me first of all maybe close this. I don't need the actual browser open. And again, it will going to ask you, are you okay with this? Well, obviously we are, since we want to work with this. And before we do anything, again, I'm going to keep this in a dock. So I'm just going to say options and keep it in a dock. Now, once we open up the Visual Studio Code, and you know what, let me just make this bigger so it's a little bit easier to see. We're going to be met by welcoming string. Now, in welcoming screen, we have a few options. We can open up a new file, open the folder, and as you can see, we can also customize this. Now, this is going to be the first time when you're actually downloading Visual Studio Code. Obviously, you're not going to have the recent projects. The only reason I do is because I had to reinstall the Visual Studio Code just so we can go through all the steps together. Now, I'm not going to spend tons of times right now on Visual Studio Code because I would like to get us up and running and actually create our first web page. I do want to show you though the general workspace. So let me close this first of all. And as you notice, these icons, right? So we have at the very top, this is where we're going to be working with our files. So as you notice, I'm opening this up, and this is going to be the space where we're going to be doing most of our work. In fact, all of our work. And this would be our file structure. So whether there's going to be folders, files, or images, or anything like that, this is going to be within this tab over here, within this sidebar. Now, next we have few other things, few other icons that we're not going to use right now. Let's say search throughout documents. Then we also have for the source control, which would be Git, as well as debugging. Now, again, we're not going to cover them right now because we're not going to use them. However, there will going to be something useful, which is extensions. Meaning with every text editor, you basically have capabilities of adding more features to a text editor. And we're going to do that actually in a second. But for now, just remember that these would be basically the extensions that you have available. So as you can see here, recommended. But for now, you shouldn't have any extensions installed if you obviously just downloaded the Visual Studio Code. Now, if you would like to search for extension, again, we can just type whatever extension we're looking for. And obviously, this is not going to come up with anything. But let's say we're going to say JavaScript, and this is going to bring me all kinds of extensions. Now, last but not least, regarding Visual Studio Code, something that will going to be important, especially later on, as we're going to be working a little more and more with Visual Studio Code, it's the settings. So if you click on this cog all the way in the bottom, notice it's going to give us settings. Now, settings allow us to customize the workspace. So let's say we want a bigger font size. So I could change this from 12 to, let's say, 22. If I would want a different tab size, again, we can just change this around. And what I'm trying to tell you is that as the more you're going to be working with your actual text editor, there's going to be times when you're changing your settings to adjust whether that's going to be an extension or just for your personal preferences. Now, also, the settings are in fact in a JSON object. So this would be a basically graphical interface how we can work with the settings. However, if let's say I'm going to change the setting from font size, let's say I'm going to save that this is going to be 22. And once I make the changes are going to be automatically saved. However, there's also an option for the JSON object. And within the JSON object, notice something interesting. So now these would be my settings. As you noticed, I changed it from whatever it was initially to, let's say, 22. So if I would want to add something else, I'm going to say, I don't know, that the setting for the fonts is going to be something like 30. Now, in this case, I would need to save it. So I have a few options. Either I can go here and just look for the file and check this out, that I can obviously save it, or I would have to use the shortcut, and that would be Command and S. Again, if you're working on Windows, that probably would be Control and S, but since this is a Mac, I'm just going to say that this would be Command and S. Now, in my case, again, I'm going to delete this because I would like to come back to it within a few videos whenever we're going to make our first web page already. But just to let you know that this is where the settings would be located for the Visual Studio Code.